Hello everyone, Ashley here with Tolton Art. Thank you so much for joining today. Today we're going to dive into the topic of intermediate art supplies. I have made a previous video on art supplies if I was just starting oil painting. So if you're a beginner, I recommend watching that. I'll put it right here. A lot of what I'm about to talk about is going to be on the more expensive side and or kind of a more niched use. So these are for people that have been oil painting, you love oil painting, you know you want to keep oil painting. Okay, if you don't know that, you're just first buying supplies, go check the other video out first and then come back to this one. So, intermediate art supplies for the intermediate oil painter. The first thing we'll talk about is paint. So in the beginner video, I did talk about certain paint brands and how they're kind of categorized. Why some are cheaper, because they tend to be a little bit less quality. I dive into all of that in another video, so I don't want to dive into that now. I'll just dive into, once you're in oil painting, you need to invest in good paints. High quality, good pigmented paints. Because it's gonna make a huge difference in how your work looks, and I can almost guarantee you in a lot of ways it's gonna feel a lot better to work with, and that's why they are more expensive. Some of the brands I love, Old Holland, that's one of them. Gamblin, I love their pigments. For me personally, it tends to be a little too thick of a paint. I do like it to have a little bit more flow. Blue Ridge oil paints, Andrew Tischler uses them as well. They are amazing. I have never had a complaint with them other than the fact that their burnt umber isn't dark enough, which I guess Andrew Tischler also had an issue with. Talked to them and now they have a burnt umber deep. So they fixed that problem. But the consistency and the pigment in their paints are amazing. So there's that. The next thing you're gonna wanna upgrade is your brushes. Not always. There are times I still use very cheap brushes. I am a dirty little scrubber. I will scrub paint and like scumble it around, which frays the heck out of them. Sorry brushes, may you rest in peace. I tend to do that with the cheap ones because they're cheap and I don't really care if I ruin them. However, one of the upgrades, as I was saying, is gonna be your brushes. When you're in it, it makes a big difference, and good brushes are phenomenal. You also need to know how to take care of them. Take it from someone who just had to throw away about 4 brushes because they left it for 6 months without cleaning. Naughty artist, but really high quality brushes. One of the ones I use, well, actually the only company I use now, is Rosemary Co. They're phenomenal. I love all their oil painting brushes. There's not a single one that I have met that I have not liked. And just getting a variety of sizes. We'll talk about that in maybe another video. Do you want to know about the type of intermediate brushes? Basically, I'd get a round, I'd get a flat square, I'd get one of Andrew Tischler's dagger brushes. I also really like, I forget what these are called, which are really good for just like blending backgrounds and stuff. Love those. The next thing you're gonna wanna upgrade is the materials that you paint on. Some of that does depend a little bit on the texture that you want to have, and it comes down to personal preference. So for the longest time, I painted on canvas because that is all that I had and could afford, because there was a 50-50 chance of a painting actually working out, and so it wasn't worth paying for anything more expensive. I've gotten a lot better since then, but canvas is great. Some people paint on canvas for their entire life. There's nothing wrong with it. I will say, when I switched to Belgian linen, all of a sudden, like, things that were hard just became easy. And I was like, oh my God, is it this easy for everyone? I love linen. It is a bit softer. The canvas tends to have kind of a harder tooth to it, where linen to me feels softer and a little flatter, and it just, the paint just glides. It glides and I love it. So if that's kind of something you're interested in, I would dive deep into the materials that you paint on. There are people that paint on wood panel with oil. It just kind of depends, and you do need to experiment and find which one that fits the best for you and kind of creates the effect that you're looking for. Some of the other things that I didn't talk about in the first video, but I think now that you're kind of in it, some things that I would have on standby are some different colored pastel pencils. I have a red, I have a blue, and I have a white. And what I use them for is that if I am working on a painting and something doesn't look right, or say for example, it's a reused canvas and there's already an image on it and I'm just looking to, put my next painting on top of it, instead of just like working a ground into everything again and trying to get it back to a white canvas, which would take so much paint and so much time, I have these pastels so that I can very easily redraw the image on top of whatever might be already on the canvas. That has happened as well with some of my small alla prima paintings. I'll draw something up on them and then completely change my mind, and I don't want to erase it because it'll leave a whole bunch of stuff behind. And instead I just use these pastel pencils and redraw the new image on, and it just allows for that different color, that pop of color, so you can really see the changes that you need to make, and it's really easy to follow. So I would have those on standby. The next art supplies that I would also upgrade as an intermediate artist is I would get a set of high quality pencils. I would go from I'd get a range that varies from either an F or a 2H all the way to about an 8B. You can do a lot within that range. Well, you can do everything in that range, actually. And the reason I would do that is because if you're an intermediate artist, I'm assuming will also be working on improving your drawing skills and doing your underdrawings and things like that. And having a really, really nice set of high quality pencils is gonna make a really big difference and really be able to get you the values that you need in order to attain the best artwork. So the next thing that I think is a level up from the beginner oil painter is the mediums in which you use. This also comes down to personal preference. There are so many different concoctions that people have when it comes to their oil painting mediums. Some people still just paint straight out of the tube, but in my beginner one, I recommended Liquid Original because of the fast drying time. And now you can kind of get into more of the other ones. So for example, right now I paint in just linseed, and I know a lot of people don't like that because of how long it can take to dry. And I honestly don't mind because I love the way that it paints that much that it's way more important for me to make a good painting and then just, understand the dry time that is required for it. But on top of Liquid Original, I would look into investing in linseed oil, a refined linseed, and then I'd also look into getting an oleo paste. Same company as Liquid also makes an oleo gel, which is really nice. It adds a really kind of thick consistency, also takes longer to dry. So that's why it's kind of in the intermediate realm, because it's assuming that you now understand the rules of fat over lean. You're understanding the dry times of the mediums and that what it means, like when you're still able to work into your artwork or when it has dried and you need to like oil it out and kind of repaint it. And so like you've gone through some of these things, but those are some of the mediums that I would look into for that. Some things that I also didn't talk about in the beginner one that I think are more applicable to the intermediate artist are things like easels. And if you've proven to stick with oil paint long enough, I think now you can start looking into things like a proper setup for you. So getting a really nice easel. I have an A-frame one back here. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I got it when I was a beginner because I needed something cheap. I think it was maybe $100 for this A-frame, and I'm growing out of it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm looking for an H-frame down the line to spend the money on getting a really nice one because of the fact that the A-frame tends to lean more. It takes up a lot of triangular space, and it has a really hard time being vertical, so you're always painting a little bit like this. When you're a beginner, you're learning it's not important, but when you are creating expensive, high-end, high-quality pieces, it is nice for it to be able to be perfectly vertical and be able to move on that realm. I like the idea of it being on rollers, and there's just a lot to an H-frame that I really like the dynamics of it and its stability, but mostly the vertical capabilities of it are what I'm looking for. So that's my tip for you as well. I would look into getting a drafting table, things that are going to help your productivity and your workflow and make your paintings high quality. The next tip is not really an art tool, but it does influence your art. And that would be the lighting in your studio as well as the color of your walls. The reason I say this because both of those things can dramatically affect the reflected light and tone onto your canvas. So for example, I know people that have painted in a room that was already quite warm, and because of that, their eye was playing tricks on them, and they painted heavily in the cool tones, and when they would take their paintings outside, all of a sudden their paintings looked way cooler than what they thought it was. And vice versa, if they were in a cool kind of tinted room, then they'd overcompensate by painting the paintings way warmer, and then it just didn't make sense when they went out into natural light. So make sure you have a good natural light source. Make sure that you have even a light source that you can kind of change the hue to cool or warm, or you have lights that are both. I know a lot of people that have cool and warm lights that both shine on it to kind of counteract. And then same thing goes with the walls. Make sure it's a neutral color, or like for me, I have one wall that's cool and one wall that's warm. And between the two of them, they kind of counteract each other and create a very balanced light. Not really an art supply, but it is something that as an intermediate artist, you're starting to charge more for your artwork. These sort of things do matter. Some other art supplies that I think you should have as an intermediate artist is a pochade box or a plein air kit. Plein air and observational artwork will surpass any photo replication or like painting from photos. So having a setup and a box that you can travel with, take outside, set up to do these observational paintings is going to elevate your artwork so much. I just got my first pochade box this year and I love it. It is so fun and it's so unique to be able to do that. And honestly, it's great for a studio artist like me to be able to just go outside and also be outside, and painting is wonderful, but just on a technical level, it does improve so much. And then you can take your paints everywhere and always be painting. So that is definitely an art supply I would invest in. And another one is just a sketchbook. I mean, that kind of applies for beginners as well, because hopefully they are practicing and learning and training this hand-eye coordination. But along with those pencils, just make sure you have a good sketchbook that you can just kind of pick up and utilize whenever you need to. Overall, those are the things that I would add to your lineup when you're transitioning from beginner oil painter to intermediate oil painter. I hope you found it helpful. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that you think I missed and should add into that list. If you want to see any more videos from me, there's going to be one popping up on your screen shortly. I hope you enjoy that one as well. But as always, thank you so much for joining, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.